Lore Together is proud to be part of the Boss Rush Games Network. Feel free to find out more at bossrushgames.com/network. Hi, I'm Safi.
And I'm Mystic.
And this is Lore Together. This is the podcast where a husband and wife team go over all the storytelling, world building, and characters of video games. Because it's what we like to do together. We lore together.
Yep.
Mystic was literally dancing while I was saying that, really hoping that I would crack up. So
I'm here to help you blow take. It's okay.
No, I wanted to do it first take and I did. And you can't take that away from me, sir.
This is episode 93.
Woohoo!
But before we get into the episode, if you'd like to contact us, you can do that in a bunch of different ways. Twitter, or X, I guess now.
I don't know
We're calling
what
it Twitter.
is.
Instagram, Mastodon, Reddit, YouTube, and Steam. Links can be found down in the description. Or through email at loretogether@gmail.com. We'd like to hear from you. Any corrections, errors, feedback, all that stuff. Also, the Boss Rush Discord. You can find a link to Boss Rush down in the description as well.
You might notice that our socials had been quiet for last week. It's because we were on vacation, and we are now back from vacation.
Yep.
So thank you for your patience. For those who missed our Thursday live streams, we're glad to be back. We're happy to have you here again.
Yep.
And I think it's time for another episode, Mister.
Well, no, we still have to talk about if you want to support us.
Oh.
You can do that in one of two ways. First of those two ways, give us a like, 5 stars, thumbs up, heart, whatever it is, wherever you're listening. We appreciate it. And the other way you can support us is through Patreon at patreon.com/loretogether, where you can pay a per episode pledge to get early access to episodes, early access to our Let's Plays, which we will get back to now that we're back from vacation.
Yes.
Mini episodes, which we will get back to now that we're back from vacation.
Yes.
And a bunch of other stuff. Gen Con is a lot of work for both of us, because
Gen
we
Con-
both run a ton of games.
Gen Con is a job for. Oh, and thank you everybody who is coming to us from Gen Con, because I gave a couple cards out. Said, hey, I'm Safi. Here's what I do. One other thing we're going to work on is a website soon.
Yep.
So we'll keep you guys posted on that, and I'll be much more regular on the socials. And please join us, support us, and thanks for listening.
Yep. So this is episode 93.
Yes, you said that before.
Yep. We are heading back once again to a franchise we've covered a great deal. It's a lot of going back as of late. Next episode, I do plan on having something new. That's not Gabriel Knight.
I haven't. Oh, jeez. Anything but Gabriel Knight. Like, I was giving out the card and I was afraid, do I want to give the caveat, don't listen to the Gabriel Knight episode? It sounds like that I'm just complaining about everything. Because that game had so much that irritated me. Anyway, moving on.
We are doing this revisit. Well, okay, this revisit is kind of inspired by our very own editor.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You said he had a suggestion.
They and I were chatting.
Yeah.
And they've been jonesing to play Skyrim for the first time when they get a new PC, something I am also helping them with.
Oh.
And so I thought I could give a little lore chunk to whet their appetite.
Oh, so we're going back to Elder Scrolls, huh?
Yep. Now, we've not delved into the different eras of Nirn and Tamriel all that much beyond the Creation and Dawn era.
Oh, and we were in the Creation and Dawn era.
Yeah.
That was like episodes 3
and 4.
3 and 4, and then we followed up with God stuff with 5 and 6.
Yeah.
So we dug deep. And that was when we were first figuring out that 4-parters weren't our thing.
Yeah. So the eras themselves tend to be more like timelines of events punctuated by game events.
Yeah.
To a degree. The third era is when most of these things take place, actually, except for the second era is when the MMO lives.
Right. So it's intentionally centuries before, so that way they can do unique stories that's still tied to the game that you know without it being game breaking.
Yeah. And to be entirely honest, I'm a bit wary of doing those massive timelines after just covering the Dragon cycle of Guild Wars.
Oh boy, that was a cycle.
Yeah, much as I love Guild Wars, I think for these gigantic universe things like Elder Scrolls, Mass Effect, Guild Wars, etc., I'm going to do smaller subjects going forward.
Take a trick out of my book, because that's how I approach a lot of that stuff for the things I cover.
Yeah. I think it's just a better way of going forward on this. So we're going to take a look at one very influential life, that of Tiber Septim. In a way, this is akin to episode 12 when you covered Dragon Age's King Merrick.
So we're going to be covering stuff that's not just in one game.
This is not... Yeah, this is from multiple games, multiple stories, all that stuff.
Okay.
Those of you who know your Elder Scrolls also know at this point that we're talking about Talos.
Yes.
Which means we're finally talking about Talos after saying, we'll get to Talos another time way back in episode 4.
Well, at least we kept to our promise.
It took almost 90 episodes.
It took, what is that, 2.5 years? No, 3 years. That's 3 years people have been waiting for Talos. I just have this little idea of like people like, give us the Talos story now, like banging down the doors.
So whenever we cover certain franchises, there are just certain things that our patrons and for certain fans just really know. We have fans who just really know Elder Scrolls, and I'm sure I'm going to get something wrong in this. Please let us know in the Discord.
If you would like a deeper dive into the Elder Scrolls universe overall, not just the little amuse-bouche that we like to offer here, then Written Uncertainty is a great podcast for that, and they do really good subject analysis and research on it. Yeah. But we always like to talk about very specifically the storytelling elements and everything like that, and the story of an NPC is one that I feel like gets overlooked a lot, but it's something that has to be well written and continuous and easy to be referred to and logical. Otherwise, you're, especially for somebody like Tiberium Septim, Talos, like
Tiber Septim.
Tiberium. I just realized what I did. I want to. Somebody make the little resin cast of Tiberium Septim for me, please. Just made out of that beautiful green crystal.
Yeah.
But yes, with a character as important as this, you need to be able to be consistent. You need to be able to be able to reference it easily. Something that makes sense in the world. Something that is the difference between, I took a writing class where there was a professor who made a very good point. Just because it's possible doesn't mean it's probable. And sometimes, even in a fantastical universe, you know, you have to understand the limitations on rulers and how they were raised to know what's possible for them to do and what's more likely probable for them to do in outrageous circumstances.
Well, this is going to get pretty outrageous.
I know. I'm ready.
There's a little bit of backstory you do have to weave in here before we get to Tiber Septim specifically. Essentially, during the middle of the Second Era, the Second Empire collapsed, leaving the provinces of Skyrim to self-govern. They went from being parts of an empire to essentially nation-states.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There were obvious attempts to reunite the land as people fought for the Ruby Throne in the Imperial City, but none of those really kind of took hold. Eventually, Tiber Septim is born in the late years of the Second Era, 828 to be approximate. We don't have an exact date, but that's a suspected year. And the reason for the discrepancy is probably typos in the games.
That makes sense.
In one game, he's 108 when he dies. In another, he's 600 something when he dies. So it's like there's a typo. Yeah.
That's pretty extreme.
Yeah.
And also it would make sense that maybe it's recorded differently, because if we're talking about a world that doesn't have instantaneous communication across the whole empire.
No, this was just a crazy narrator.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah, this was I believe this was Potema. She's kind of nuts.
Okay, never mind.
I could be wrong about that. I don't have that in my notes. I'm just recalling from
memory.
Way too much time on the unofficial Elder Scroll pages.
Okay.
We don't know much about his early life, and what's there has been kind of contradictory.
Okay.
As is often the case for founding myths of dynasties, interpretations and rumors often mix with the reality. Mm-hmm. However, the generally accepted versions of events are as follows. Tiber Septim was born in Atmora, the continent to the north of Tamriel. This is over the Sea of Ghosts.
Wow. Okay.
Sea of Ghosts is the sea that is north of Skyrim.
Okay.
You've seen it if you play Skyrim.
So it's a frigid, cold place.
Yes. He spent his youth in Skyrim actually after making the voyage across the Sea of Ghosts, and it was in Skyrim where he learned the art of the tongues, also known as the Way of the Voice. Basically a way of using your own voice to influence the world via dragon speak, a skill made famous in Skyrim as every Fus Roda meme echoed across the internet.
Dovahkiin. I don't know the rest of the words. But...
That's fine. He also learned the strategies of war from the chieftains in Skyrim. Then, at the age of 20, he led the invasion of Old Herolden, taking it back from the Reachmen of High Rock, and this was his earliest known military victory. Now, Herolden, just for some context, because that is a place you can visit, is in western Skyrim near the border with High Rock, and is, it's changed hands numerous times.
Yeah.
To the Nords, it's a settlement of early historical significance, probably one of the first ones.
Okay.
To the Reachmen, it was neutral ground where the different clans could meet to trade and converse.
Oh.
So, in short, it's nothing like we see in modern Skyrim.
Right.
But that's to be expected given that Skyrim is many centuries in the future from Tiber Septim's time.
Right. That makes sense.
Soon after this victory, growing storms made it known that the Greybeards were about to speak. As the nearby villagers were being evacuated, Tiber Septim traveled up the mountain the Greybeards called home, called the Throat of the World, where they removed their gags and spoke his name, causing the world to shake. The Greybeards told him that he would come to rule Tamriel, but that he must go south to Cyrodiil to do so. Then the legend gets more colorful with its description of events. Before he left, he learned the secrets of the high peak winds, the roar of the winter blast, and the warm silk of the summer updrafts.
Oh.
When he descended from the mountains, he came riding the clouds, striding through the air, wearing great boots he claimed were gifts of the Greybeards.
Riding the clouds. Now, it makes you wonder in times like this, like, was that just a fancy way of saying he rode on some sort of flying creature, which there's plenty of them. Oh.
Like, so the boots that they are referring to, you can actually find, I believe, in Morrowind, and they make you levitate.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind.
Levitation was removed after Morrowind, but that's a gameplay limitation.
Unless you glitch out, which has happened to me trying to complete a certain quest.
There's a difference between like levitation and Morrowind, because Morrowind was not instanced in the same way like Oblivion and Skyrim were, where the cities were not part of the world until you entered a loading zone. Like everything was in the same world space.
So you could more limit what could happen in each space because you had more total control of smaller spaces. At least programming the game wise.
I don't follow what you just said.
So when everything is so fluid to be in and out of it, where like to go from city to city, you don't need a loading screen.
In Morrowind, no, you do not need a loading screen. You can walk literally without a loading screen from the starting location all the way to the next city. Once you enter a building, there's a loading screen, but the overworld is all in the same space.
I think I'm just misunderstanding because I thought the way you were describing it, it seemed like since everything was a little bit more siloed in the way it was programmed, it would be easier to manage. But the reason
levitation was removed was because in Oblivion and Skyrim, if you went above the walls of the city, this is why all the cities are surrounded by walls in those two games, is because when you go above those walls, there's nothing in the city because the city is its own world space.
Well, which is why you have to open a door to get into the city.
Which is why they don't have levitation, because then you can't see over the walls.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. Fun things that happen.
Okay. Well, now I understand.
So Tiber Septim becomes general of the Colovian estates under King and later Emperor Culhwch.
Culhwch, what a name.
Yeah. The Colovian estates are basically the western half of the province of Cyrodiil. General Septim, Tiber Septim, met the combined army of Skyrim and High Rock, who were then hostile to Culhwch, on the field of battle in the ruins of the ancient city of Sancre Tor.
Okay.
Sancre Tor was like a first era city,
Oh, okay.
When they saw him use the power of the voice, Skyrim's army basically changed alliances and joined with him, recognizing him as a son of Skyrim and heir to the empires of men.
Yep.
You are prophesized as the leader, so we are...
That sounds like some Nord stuff right there, yeah.
The Bretons of High Rock saw things differently. In year 854 of the Second Era, a Reachman Nightblade managed to kill Emperor Culicain and slit Tiber Septim's throat.
Whoa!
While the wound did not kill him, he could no longer use the voice, left with basically just a whisper.
Ooh. That's
the official version. If you want the heretical version of events, according to a book titled The Arcturian Heresy, Hjalti Earlybeard was born of the island of Alcair in High Rock. Amid rumors of a warlord destined to rule Tamriel, he rose to prominence in the service of King Culicain, who fought to unify Cyrodiil. Mm-hmm. When the Greybeard spoke amidst the rumblings of an individual who would defeat the elves and unite Tamriel with the restored empire, the warrior youth Hjalti was this fabled figure. The spirit of the ancient Atmoran king Ysmir Wolfhearth provided assistance to the young general, but the manner of his assistance is very vaguely described. It states that a storm talked all night with Hjalti and deflected arrows while Hjalti shouted down the wall of Old Horolden.
So we're no longer not saying that Tiber Septim did this. We are now saying that this other...
Yeah, we'll get there in a second.
Okay.
So he shouts down the wall of Old Horolden and then is given the name Talos, meaning storm crown, by his men. After the province was conquered, after all of Cyrodiil is unified, Hjalti murders Culicain and his contingent in the Imperial City and blames the deaths and ensuing blaze on the assassins from High Rock. Ysmir continued to aid in Hjalti's conquest, and Hjalti subsequently took the name Tiber Septim, ascending to the Ruby Throne. So either story gets you to Tiber Septim.
But one is that Tiber Septim existed, had a history, was very more clearly linked with the Nords of now Skyrim.
Yes.
And the other one is more just a High Rock guy who infiltrated.
Yes.
And then decided he wanted his own power.
The truth is likely somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
Though I am inclined to lean very heavily toward the generally accepted version. I have no reason other than personal preference, though.
I just feel like it makes more sense, especially because it's more consistent with what is actually factually true in the world. Now, we know that there are Dovahkiin who can use the dragon voice and do that stuff. Yeah. We know that those boots of levitation actually exist. We don't know...
It basically comes down to, is Tiber Septim a Nord, essentially, from Atmora, because that's where the Nords also think everyone came from.
Yes.
Or is he a Breton from High Rock? You know?
Yeah.
That's a Nord from High Rock. Like, is he from Atmora or is he from High Rock? That's kind of where it comes down to.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about that other than I am inclined to agree with you.
Yeah. In either case of the events, immediately following the death of Culicain, Tiber Septim was crowned Emperor of Tamriel and took to pursuing his ultimate goal, unifying all of Tamriel under one banner. This leads to the Tiber Wars.
The Tiber Wars?
I don't know if it's wars, might be Tiber campaign, either way. Like, unification war, go.
I still think of Tiberium Septim, and I'm thinking of them looking for nodes of resources. That's where my brain's going right now. I've ruined this episode for me, guys. I'm sorry.
So, Cyrodiil was easy. Already Emperor there.
Yeah. Ta-da!
Skyrim was also fairly simple. As much as pretty much most of the army already believed his claim because of his wielding the voice.
Yeah, that's an easy way to do that.
Some minor skirmishes with the local jarls and provinces under control.
Yes.
High Rock, home of the Bretons, fell pretty quickly after the battle mage commanders were all rounded up and executed.
Yeah, that would do it. That would totally do it.
Now, Hammerfell. Hammerfell took some time. You will remember from episode 58 that Redguards are likely the fiercest warriors in the whole of Tamriel.
Yes.
So, despite observing the might of the quickly expanding empire, the already aged and alien High King of Hammerfell, Thasad II, resisted all forms of imperial invasion.
You might as well try. You're gonna either die culturally or die physically. Which one do you prefer?
Well, it was only after his death in 862 of the Second Era that Hammerfell began to weaken, not from external invasion, but from internal revolution.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Civil war between the two most prominent factions, the rebellious Forebears and the loyalist Crowns, the latter of which supported Thassad's heir Aetor. After initial defeats, the Forebears signed a pact with the Emperor, granting him minor territory concessions in exchange for aiding them in the Civil War.
Interesting, but that's not going to last long.
Yeah. The already weakened Crowns still provided heavy resistance to invading imperial forces until at last they were cornered at Stros Mackay in 864 of the Second Era. The Battle of Stros Mackay was won thanks to Admiral Richton's shrewd tactics and the aid of Septim's dragon vassal, Naphalilargus. What? It's a dragon name.
Nilla Wafers?
Nilla Wafers. Yeah, we'll go with Nilla Wafers.
Nilla Wafers.
It doesn't come up again.
I don't know how many people I've made mad by suggesting that and sticking with it, but I don't care.
It's Nafalilargus. So it's like, I can't do that one.
Nilla Wafers.
Nilla Wafers. The Empire swiftly took control of Hammerfell, imposing several provisional governors to rule different regions. Later that same year, an uprising led by siblings Cyrus and Azara saw the Restless League come out of hiding. This is basically the events of Elder Scrolls Redguard.
Oh, okay.
They stormed the palace, and Cyrus himself cornered Provisional Governor Emil Richton and Imperial Emissary Dram. Cyrus killed them both with the soul sword, which was enchanted with the soul of Prince Aetor.
Whoa.
Yeah. Thereafter, Tiber Septim came to Stros Mackay personally to sign a treaty that gave more favorable terms to the Redguards.
Because he knew, look, there's only so many fights I'm going to win. This is not one of them. There are other places to conquer first, and then maybe, I have a feeling he was like, long run, maybe my ancestors will take care. My descendants. I said ancestors. We're not doing time travel here. My descendants will take care of this.
Elsewhere, this is Elsweyr, not,
Oh, yes.
home of the Khajiit, was decimated by the Empire. The Imperial siege was so devastating to the Khajiit people that the records of it was stricken by the Empire from the Imperial records.
It was just, they were like, this is too devastating. We can't put this is an atrocity.
Yeah. Like, that means it's really bad if the people who win are like, we did too much.
Yeah. When you win and you say, oh, I don't want that trophy.
Yeah.
What did you really win? Let's be honest.
Black Marsh, home of the Argonians, is another interesting case. It was never fully invaded by the army.
It's a marsh, dude. Like, who wants to do that? The
swamps and marshes that cover the province were way too much of a hindrance, so instead they basically took over the outer borders of the whole province, and eventually the whole province just kind of fell under Imperial control as a result.
This kind of reminds me of my strategy with Risk, wherever I'll take Africa or South America and just keep building up forces, and then somebody else takes over the rest of the map, and I'm like, I'm busy here ready to defend. What do you want to do about it, huh? So. Yeah.
Morrowind, home of the Dark Elves, was the only province to have never been incorporated into the First or Second Empire.
Oh, interesting.
Tiber was wary of going up against the Tribunal, a trio of Dunmer gods. However, his dream of a unified Tamriel won out, basically. He's like, I gotta do it.
Yeah. That's the last itch on your back that you need something to scratch for you.
Rulers of the Dunmer and the Empire could not reach initial agreements, and Tiber Septim's armies laid waste to the capital of Morrowind, Mournhold. In the wreckage of the city, Tiber and his dark elf general, Symmachus, came across the adolescent Princess Berenziah and her nurse. Now Berenziah is like a big name for later. I don't know if we actually get to her in this rest of this. I don't remember.
But she was an adolescent, so now I'm very concerned as to what happens next.
They basically both agree that she's going to be very valuable and took her into Imperial care. Yeah.
Okay,
if you're asking what I think you're asking, I don't know.
Yikes. I'm just going to leave it at the yikes, and those who know, know.
Well, at this point, she's like a kid.
I know, but still, yikes.
No, I know, but I don't think there's a record any which way.
Okay, I'm just going to leave it as an illusion as to what it is. For people who study history, I think you know what I'm talking about.
Amidst the skirmishes between the Empire and the Dumnor, mutual reservations were growing for both parties. Unbeknownst to the populace, the tribunal's power was waning due to them being cut off from their source of divine power.
Oh.
Because of this, Vivek, one of the tribunals, saw fit to actually reach an agreement with Tiber. They both signed the Armistice, a treaty that gave Morrowind near full autonomy, a right no other province possessed, in exchange for provincial status in the Empire.
Okay.
Additionally, Vivek gifted Tiber Septim the all-powerful brass golem Numidium.
Numidium.
Yeah. Tiber also personally approached the leaders of the Morag Tong, a guild of assassins. Basically, it's kind of like the predecessor to the Dark Brotherhood, I believe, or is it related to? I can't remember.
Huh.
Basically, very reputable guild of assassins, and reached an agreement with them that no non-Dunmer citizen could use their services or have a mark placed on them.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. Likely he did this to not have to worry about facing the same threat that eliminated pretty much most of the Second Empire, as the last 3 emperors of that empire were assassinated by either the Morag Tong or the Dark Brotherhood.
Yeah, that sounds like something that would happen for sure.
Then we go to Valenwood. The Elven provinces of Valenwood and the Somerset Isles had formed an alliance called the Second Eldmeri Dominion.
Okay.
Now, the Eldmeri Dominion is also in Elder Scrolls Online. That's the first Eldmeri Dominion.
Okay.
The government of Valenwood under this alliance was known as the Thalmor.
Oh, if you've played Skyrim, you probably don't like the Thalmor.
Which consisted of Bosmer chieftains and Altmer diplomats. Now, Bosmer are Wood Elves, Altmer are High Elves. This governing body was annihilated by Tiber Septim and his armies. However, Tiber allowed them to retain certain traditions, such as a tribal council.
Okay.
Then we get to the Somerset Isles. This is where things start to get a little bit more crazy. The Altmer of the Somerset Isles were incorporated into the Second Empire of Riemann Cyrodiil under extremely loose circumstances. They were very resistant to the taint of humanity on their sacred island of Eleanor, and merely accommodated Riemann. Basically, they're like, just fine, leave us alone.
But now we're talking about Riemann. Was Riemann...
Riemann is Second Empire.
Okay.
Yeah. They expressed that Tiber Septim would receive no such luxuries from them.
Wow.
Tiber Septim knew that acquiring the province in totality would be next to impossible, and early on in his conquest, he sent Zurin Arctus, his imperial battle mage, to make peace with the king of Alinor. On a ground-to-ground level, Tiber's legions didn't take the Eldmeri Dominion forces seriously at all, referring to them as Old Mary Dominion for their supposed, quote, womanly offense.
Okay, hold the phone. I'm sorry. Womanly offense?
Yeah. Elder Scrolls as a whole is fairly egalitarian for the most part when you play. This is old for even them.
Yeah, I mean, this feels a little...
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels off.
Yeah.
It feels very off, I think is the best way to put it.
That being said, at sea, they were completely outmatched.
Yeah, and when you're trying to take over an island, sometimes that's all that matters.
Yeah. And the Dominion had also allegedly allied with the Merrimer Sea Elves, which we don't really see much of, Reachman, and even Khajiit forces to oppose the expanding empire.
Well, how would you show Sea Elves? Not everybody's willing to do swimming battles as well as guild wars.
And the Sea Elves are basically aquatic elves. They have scaly skin and fin-like ears, and they appear mostly in Elder Scrolls Online.
Okay.
So basically, they're at a standstill for all intents and purposes, and this all changed after Tiber Septim acquired the Numidian from Vivek.
Okay.
He had Zurin Arctus look into the Numidian's potential and purpose. It's basically a colossal Dwemer construct. Now, the Dwemer just don't exist as far as most people are concerned anymore. The ruins are there, but nobody knows what happened to them.
So even this far ago, they didn't exist in any way, shape, or form anymore. Okay.
And this was meant to retake Dwemer territory from their enemies. Basically, it's this colossal, huge construct. I think they called it the Bronze God.
That's fair. Yeah, that sounds pretty substantial.
Yeah, but the Dwemer vanished before it was ever used. So
they built it too late is what you're telling me.
Well,
do we have theories as to why the Dwemer don't exist anymore?
They do, but they don't. There's one guy.
Are they the plot of The Descent? Like, what are you trying to say?
There's one guy in Skyrim that I remember. I'm shooting completely off the hip here.
Pew pew.
There's one guy in Skyrim who I remember is trying to figure out what happened to them.
Yeah.
And he does this weird spell.
Oh.
He vanishes from in front of you, but you can kind of call him back as a spectral version. But yeah, like there's some theories as to like the Dwemer are in a different plane or something. Yeah,
like maybe something catastrophically magical happened to them and took them away.
Oh, I am sure we have patrons who can tell you pages about the Dwemer. I know none of it.
Okay.
Beyond the little bit I've heard on YouTube videos. So, seeing how this thing is basically unstoppable, Tiber realizes it's the key to completing the conquest of Tamriel. The only issue he faces is that there is a lack of power source, as the original power supply was the Heart of Lorkhan.
Of who?
Remember the Heart of Lorkhan? Okay, so I maybe saying remember, we're talking back in 2020 when we recorded this. The Heart of Lorkhan is basically the heart of the fallen god Lorkhan, who gave the races of Tamriel magic, the races of Nern magic.
Oh my gosh. So they literally took his heart and used it to build a Colossus.
Yeah.
And power, I should say, Colossus.
The Heart of Lorkhan is out of his reach due to kind of the same reason that Vivek doesn't have power. We're not going to get into all of that. We can cover that when we cover Morrowind.
So how do you replace the heart of a god?
So that's kind of a point of a lot of dispute in the canon, actually. Some sources claim that an artifact known as the Mantella, which is this giant green gem thing, sprouted from the heart of either Zurin Arctis or Ysmir Wolfhearth.
Whoa.
It kind of depends on which version of events you're following. Regardless of which one it is, the Mantella is not adequate as adequate a power supply as the Heart of Lorkhan, but it is able to power the golem.
I just imagine that there's like a refresh rate where it's just steps slower. And it's just a creaky old
It is
thing.
kind of the fantasy equivalent of Liberty Prime from Fallout.
Yes. Yeah, I imagine, yes. That's exactly what it is.
So what is agreed upon is both Ysmir and Zurin basically vanish at this point. They're gone. They're dead.
Okay.
Or not quite. We'll get there. So Tiber moves on the Somerset Isles and activates the Numidian near Remem and again decimates the Khajiit populace.
Again? Why again?
Because they were allied with, they were in, like, this is the Khajiit populace of this town because they're in the Somerset Isles fighting against the Empire.
What does he have against the Khajiit?
It's just the order the which
What Khajiit stole his high school crush and he just could not let go. This is intense, dude.
He does this, and then he marches toward Alinor. The city, this is the capital of the Isles, falls within an hour to this thing.
Wow. And that's with it being underpowered as well.
Yeah.
So this is a massively powerful device.
Yeah. And final victory marks the end of this whole campaign, unifying Tamriel.
Now, just to get a sense of how this Colossus moved, was it moved with wheels or with legs?
It had legs, I believe. We never actually see it. We see like carvings of it, I think, and like crude drawings of it.
Yeah. And then is there something where they say how it attacks these settlements and these towns?
I did not research that part.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because, like, is it, laser beam eyes,
Freaking
dad
laser
jokes,
beam.
something truly destructive to the soul.
Dad jokes.
It's just what came to mind.
So here is the actual description. It is a 1,000-foot tall automaton.
1,000 feet.
1,000 feet.
So that's 100 stories tall, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Over 100 stories tall, actually. Jeez. It's a skyscraper. So basically, it could, if it's big enough, it just Hulk smash everything, I would assume, right?
Yeah, and literally, there's a line here. It says, temporal distortions have accompanied each known use of the Numidian.
Oh, that's no good. That sounds like a really bad idea to use, then. Sounds like the kind of thing that, the gods are trying to tell you. Why? Please don't. This might explain why, the Dwemer are all poof. Just gone.
Yeah, so...
Hey, I made this great... This is kind of like when people were afraid to test the atomic bomb because they thought that it might light the whole atmosphere on fire.
Yeah.
This is exactly this, except it actually happened to the Dwemer. Well, now you gotta be careful because you might put us in another plane of existence if it just gets too powerful.
You may change time by turning this thing on. After having finally unified the whole of Tamriel, the new emperor of the whole continent used the Numidian to further fortify his empire and rule over the land by crushing neutral ruling families all throughout the continent, and then enthroning rulers who were loyal to him in their place. Standard stuff for an empire.
Yeah, that's fair. You got it. That's how you solidify your legacy right there.
Suddenly, a new foe appeared, the Underking, a rotting undead wizard who controlled the skies. Disgusted by Septim's actions, the Underking engaged the Numidian in epic battle. The Underking destroyed the golem, but was killed by the construct's final flailings. He lived in a state of half-life thereafter.
So, he took on this Colossus, and he's powerful enough to destroy it, but not powerful enough to escape it once he destroys it. This is a poorly thought out plan, Underking.
Partially. So, if I remember correctly, the Underking is basically either Eastmere Wolfirth or Zon Arctis. Like it's like.
Do they switch depending on which one is the heart and which one's the?
I believe so. This is kind of a thing. This is a kind of place where I started getting confused reading this, and I was like, there are people who are going to cover this in more detail. I'm just covering Tiber Septim.
Right. That's fair. That's fair.
So, despite all of this, Tiber Septim crowned himself as the first ruler of a fully unified Tamriel, and the Third Empire was truly born. He declared the end of the Age of Chaos, the Second Era, and the beginning of the Third Era.
Yes. This is the dawning of the age of... it's not Aquarius, really, though.
No. So, certain writings claim at the onset of his fully unified reign, Tiber acknowledged that the dense jungles that encompass Cyrodiil were hated by his people, and thus he proclaimed to have breathed in royalty to reshape the very land that his red legions dwelt upon. Basically, that's a lot of whatever to say. He took all the imperial funds, tithes, and, all the money from the Ebony and Morrowind he now had access to, and the tolls along the patrolled highways, and completely rebuilt and fortified Cyrodiil and the Imperial City.
Yeah, that's called building a legacy. I mean, he did a lot of horrible things to do it, so as much as I keep saying, that's what you do, but just historically, if you're going to maintain a legacy that's going to have any longevity, that's what you do. Yeah.
So there is a bit of a discrepancy here. We've seen Cyrodiil in the Second Era in Elder Scrolls Online, and it looks, for the most part, much like it did in Oblivion, which is very late Third Era. So where those jungles come from at the end of the Second Era is a bit odd, which apparently, canonically, it's boringly stated to be a transcription error.
Oh.
Which, that's one interpretation. It's a transcription error. Tiber Septim tamed the wilds, essentially, but it was not jungle. The more interesting explanation, in my opinion, we'll get to shortly.
Oh, okay. I would just think that, he had to break all those good fortifications, but then had to repair them to fortify himself. That's kind of where I would think
Towards the end of his reign, in 36 of the Third Era...
So he reigned for a pretty long time then.
Yeah. The holy site of Sancretor comes up again. It was corrupted by an unknown evil. Tiber sent the 4 greatest blades. Blades are kind of like his protectors.
Yeah.
I think we covered them briefly when we talked about Akavir, when we mentioned the whole of Tamriel and its geography.
Yeah.
So he sends the 4 blades in to these ruins, and it turns out to be the work of the Underking, who in an act of vengeance cursed the blades with undeath to guard the ruin for all time.
Ha ha ha!
Yeah. The Grandmaster of the Blade subsequently sealed the ruins to prevent any other from falling into the Underking's powerful magic. So, yeah. In 38 of the Third Era, despite rumors of elixirs and spells to extend his vitality, or that he had been granted immortality, Tiber Septim died at the age of 108 years old.
Wow.
Though some feel it was simply old age, others believed he was mortally wounded at the Battle of Sancretor, though that comes from a very weird mobile phone port of Oblivion, and as we just said, he sent his blades in there. It's not like he was really on the field as far as I know.
Yeah, unless there was some weird magic thing that pierced through the... I don't know.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense.
For the Oblivion phone port, like JavaScript phone port, like old flip phone port,
Oh, that's bad.
the entirety of the game's dialogue is on one Wikipedia page.
Oh, yeah, that's way too short.
So like I said, very weird mobile phone port. Regardless of the manner of his passing, upon his deathbed, he yielded the throne to his eldest son or grandson, Pelagius. It's kind of hard to know which relation he actually has with Pelagius in the records. It's a little contradictory.
Oh, okay.
He ascended to Therius as a divine upon his death, making the 8 divines we covered in episode 4 become the 9.
Which is the whole debate in Skyrim, right?
Yeah. It was said to have reigned for a fortnight after he died, and as if the very land itself wept over the emperor's loss. He also died the richest man in history.
Yeah, that's fair.
The one theory I did
Jeffrey Bezos. Jeffrey Bezos. Sorry.
The one theory I did see that I liked was that he so hated those jungles on Cyrodiil that he just removed them from time when he became divine.
Oh, really?
That was like one fan comment. I was like, I like that one.
That's a good one. Hey, before I go, one last thing. Booyah!
Yeah. So anyway, the line of emperors that follows is the Septim dynasty.
Yes.
And under the Septims, Tamriel prospered and its provinces enjoyed peace and stability on a level not seen in centuries. To a degree. Every single game in the franchise, save for Elder Scrolls Online, takes place after all the events we just discussed.
Right.
So, as Talos, he is worshipped as the protector and patron of just rulership and civil society. Mm-hmm. Problem is, if you've played Skyrim,
yeah,
you know that Talos worship is a hot-button issue within the Empire in the Fourth Era.
Absolutely. They do not like it.
But seeing as how this whole episode was spawned by wanting to whet the appetite of someone who hasn't played it, I don't want to spoil it for them.
And a lot can change over centuries, even if you think that's your relative that's being worshipped as a god.
Yeah.
And that might be the entire reason why you have a problem with it.
Yep. So that is Tiber Septim.
I still want it to be Tiberium Septim.
That's your takeaway, okay.
No, I'm sorry. I never take away what you want me to take away from these episodes, Mystic. You should know this by now. I want it to be Tiberium Septim. I just want it to be this green Dovahkiin just running around taking control of stuff.
So it's also going to be a huge rant from you about the economics of Tamriel?
No, I think economics in Skyrim make more sense than economics in that other game, yes.
In
the game that shall not
Command
be named.
and Conquer.
In Command and Conquer.
From one slide of basically a presentation, and there was like a 20-minute rant. What episode was that even? So that's episode 54, if you want to hear Safi's rant.
You can tell that there's some world builders who care very much for the details of making things consistent, like Elder Scrolls.
Don't start again.
And there are others who put in throwaway sentences that break their entire world, like the game that shall not be named. Just saying. And yes, I did go over this in episode 54, so you can listen to my whole issue there. We don't need to bring it up again.
All right, everybody. I think that's it.
That's it. I'm gonna leave now before I get more frustrated thinking about it. But thanks so much for joining us. And just remember, the Thursday after this, we will do...
I don't know what to do for this one. We'll ask our patrons or our Discord for help on this one.
Yeah, follow us on Patreon or Discord to see which of the Elder Scrolls games that we'll play.
The one that comes immediately to mind is either Oblivion, where we deal with a direct, like, a Septim
direct
Emperor,
descendant.
or Skyrim, but we don't even have a Skyrim file to play, so what's it going to be?
Yeah.
I mean, we have Lorik, but Lorik is not related to anything.
We're not trying to play Lorik for the regular live streams. No. And then just keep in mind that after that, we do our alternate Thursdays playthrough of Mass Effect.
Yep.
Which we will be getting back into.
Yes.
And, oh my gosh, it's so great going back to Mass Effect and just seeing, it's like seeing old friends again. Let's be honest.
But thank you guys for listening.
Thanks so much, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.